create a new image, 10 by 10 inches, 300 pixels per inch. Use the skills you've learned so far to create the following. So I started with just a simple marquee tool, elliptical marquee, made a circle. And remember the shift key lets us constrain it to a circle. And remember we can add to selections and we can use multiple different tools. So if I went to my rectangular marquee, and I can command plus or command minus at any time to zoom in and out, I could make a rectangular selection that adds itself. Remember we have the add or subtract to selection. With this add to selection, that becomes part of that circular selection. And you can make it any color you want. I'm going to go for blue because that's the color I had as my foreground color already, and I'm kind of inherently lazy. And if you reference the PDF, basically we've got one shape on this side. We've already created this one. There's another shape on the other side. I'm going to make the second half over here. Do I need to go through the whole process again? Not necessarily. The other side is basically the same as this side, only a little bit larger. So watch this. I can take this layer that I created and I can duplicate it. There's a bunch of ways I can do that. I can grab it, drag it down onto the new layer icon, and there's a copy of it. And if I grab the Move tool, which is this little plus sign at the top here, the keyboard shortcut to get to the Move tool is V, I can move that duplicate around. Now right now it's facing the wrong direction, but I can flip it the other way. Watch this. If I go under Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal, look at what happens. It flips on its horizontal axis. Now it's too small right now, but if I do Edit, Transform, Scale, and make it just a little bit larger. And it doesn't matter if I don't get the alignment perfect, because I can always move it around. Remember, it's on its own separate layer. I want to keep it as editable as possible. So I know that the shadow, if we look at the reference image here, is on just the smaller side of the pill. So it's not on this upper part. How could I get it to show only on this side and not on this side? What do you think? Where would I put it in my stacking order here? Would I put it on the very top, on the very bottom, or in between these layers? If I put it on top, okay, that's not a very good shadow. Let's say I bring that hardness down, and maybe even the opacity. If I put the shadow on top here, hey, and how am I drawing it so perfectly straight? If I've had a lot of coffee and I'm doing a jiggly stuff like that, how could I still do it straight even if I'm jiggling? Shift. If you hold the Shift key, it constrains it to the vertical axis. Now with this, oh, hang on. If I make a new transparent layer here, and I do it at the top of the stack, I see it on the top edge of this pill here, on this side, and I see it on the bottom edge, and I see it over the background there. If I turn this off, you can see all that transparent. It's showing up over top of everything. Two things we got to do. If I want this shadow to only show up on the smaller side, not on the larger, what do I got to do about the stacking order? Do I put it below both the layers? On top of both the layers? Or in between the layers? And then, clip it. Do you guys know about clipping? Watch this. Right now, it's affecting the pill, but it's also going right out into that transparent in the background. How do I clip it to the layer below? Anybody remember? There's a bunch of ways it could be done. The simplest way, notice how there's a line in between each of the layers there. If I hold down the Option key and I hover over the line, look at what my cursor does. If I click, it clips to the layer below. Notice how the layer moved to the right a few pixels and this little arrow appeared pointing directly to the bottom shell. That shadow now only affects the smaller side of the pill case. Now what about the shading on the pill? See how it's lighter on the top and darker on the bottom? How could I do that? What if I just made a new transparent layer? And look at this. When I have this bottom pill part selected, the shadow is clipped to it. If I make a new transparent layer, that transparent layer is also clipped to the pill bottom. So if I grab my paintbrush now, and I do a fairly large and very soft-edged brush, take that hardness all the way down to 0, and also a really low opacity. I'm at like 20% on the opacity here. Watch this. If I click, hold down the Shift key and drag across, There's a little bit of a shadow on the bottom of the pill. If I don't like it, I can Command Z and take another shot at it. If I want a little bit of a highlight along the top, hit X, click and drag. And because it's clipped to the pill below, it doesn't show up anywhere else. The order you create the elements in isn't that important. I see some people are doing the stripes before the reflection. That's totally fine. So if you're not sure which it is, turn the eyeball off and on. This seems to be the left stripe. So I'll double click and I'll call it left stripe. For the reflection across the top, I took a paintbrush, made sure I had white paint and a little bit of a smaller brush. And I dropped the opacity. I was down around like 30–40%. You can either do it a low opacity brush or, whoops, I was at the top of the stack there. New transparent layer. This is going to be my highlight. And you can either do it at a low opacity or do it at a high opacity and lower its opacity using the slider here. But as far as the roundness on the edge there, notice I went the entire length of the pill. If I want to get rid of this on the edge though, I can give it a layer mask. So by giving this a layer mask, I can take some black paint and I can simply hide that off the edge. So it looks like it's only reflecting where it's facing towards us. So it's kind of like faking it. I mean, everything here is faking it because we started with nothing. Here's all the layers. From here all the way down to here are the layers that make up the pill. The background's not part of it because that's just this transparent background there. So if I were to take these layers here and duplicate them all, I could then merge them all into one copy of that pill. Watch this. I'm going to take all these layers, I'll drag them down onto the new layer icon right between the trash and the folder icon, and it makes a copy of them. Here's my originals, and here's the copy that are still selected. Watch this. If I right click in here, merge layers, there we go. So look at the top here. If I move this around, there's a duplicate, but this is just one layer that has all that pill information on it. All the other layers down below are still intact. So if I take this layer, put it at the bottom, well, it's not the right way around, is it? The darkness is on the bottom. If it's a reflection, the darkness would be on the top. The top of this pill would be reflecting down to the bottom. What do I do to get this the right way around so I have the dark on the top and the light on the bottom? Transform, flip vertical. And that makes a vertically flipped version of it. And then I can just lower its opacity, and I gave it a little bit of a blur as well. This kind of looks like it's on like a mirrored surface. If I blur it a bit though, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, you can see it puts a little bit of softness on, like it's a bit of a matte surface, maybe a bit of a not so shiny surface. And as far as the fact that it kind of disappeared, you can see the reflection here and then it faded out. I just used a layer mask. Watch this, new layer mask icon, grab a paintbrush, some black paint, and with that shift key, I can drag across. Just looks like a nice little reflection in the white surface there.